Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a few things NBA related on yesterday's slate of games, a few takeaways I've had from it, a few takeaways I've had from some of these teams on what I've observed in the last couple of weeks, and just some general thoughts on that. If you guys do enjoy the video, feel free to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And if you guys want to join me at any other socials, all my other socials are in a link tree in the description down below. That being said, let's get right into it with the start title and the thumbnail of today's video. The Milwaukee Bucks have now lost 4 games in a row for the first time in essentially since they've been atop the East. It's been a couple of years for sure. And this team has not looked the same without Jrue Holiday in the lineup. It's the way it's been. This team has not been anywhere near as good without Jrue Holiday. Giannis has had to be a much more primary ball handler, and this season he hasn't had to do that as much. Now, obviously he still can, but we've seen that Giannis can be very effective off the ball as a slasher, as a guy who can get in off of the initial dribble penetration that then creates movement from the defense, and then so Giannis has even more driving lanes. It opens a lot more for him because his offense is in and around the rim and in the paint. And it's much easier to obtain your offense in the paint when you're getting post-ups via someone else being the primary ball handler, or someone like Jrue Holiday or Chris Middleton, who's also improved his playmaking this season, making that initial action and creating that shift in the defense to then create more driving lanes for someone like Giannis to be able to expose. And so they're lacking that right now with Jrue Holiday being out of the lineup, because Bryn Forbes is not offering that as the other starting guard now alongside DiVincenzo. Another note last night. Chris Middleton's been in a little bit of a slump, and inevitably he'll get out of that. Chris Middleton's a baller, he's a scorer, he's an all-star. But Chris Middleton only took 8 shots last night against the Toronto Raptors in 38 minutes. I don't care what slump Chris Middleton is in. I don't care what defense Chris Middleton gets thrown at him. It is inexcusable from either a coaching standpoint, whether this is a game plan thing, or whether this is a scheme thing, or however it is. Middleton needs to find a way, along with Coach Bud needs to find a way to get Middleton more than 8 shots in a game. It just needs to happen. Middleton is too good of an offensive player for this team, especially with Jrue Holiday out of the lineup, to not have Middleton shooting in 38 minutes of game time. Meanwhile, DiVincenzo shot 14 times, Bobby Portis shot 11, given he made 7 of his 11, so those were warranted. And Pat Connaughton shot 15. DiVincenzo did not shoot well, Connaughton and Bobby Portis did. But irregardless of how well those guys shot, Chris Middleton cannot finish a game with 8 shots. He just can't. He can't. Unless DiVincenzo and Connaughton are shooting like 60% from deep and Giannis has got 40 points or something, that just can't happen. And that's not what happened last night. DiVincenzo was 1 of 8 for deep, and Connaughton was 4 of 10. And Giannis had a good game. Certainly a good game, but it wasn't a, oh my god, he's absolutely obliterating the Raptors. He had 10 rebounds, 8 assists, 5 steals, 2 blocks, 34 points. Still an insane stat line, but he didn't absolutely dominate the game, because otherwise they would have won. And as we see, they didn't, as they allowed 124 points to a Toronto Raptors team that didn't have Lowry for half of the game, although Lowry was very, very instrumental in his 22 minutes that he did play. Getting 18 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. The key factors last night for the Toronto Raptors. Fred VanVleet, when he's on, and last night he was on, he drops 33 on the Milwaukee Bucks. And OG Anunoby being back in the lineup is so crucial for this Toronto Raptors team. So crucial. Having his ability to hit threes and create offense in a few other ways is massive. His cuts, his drives, his ability to get to the rim, get offensive rebounds, and most importantly, especially in the game against Milwaukee, where someone has to deal with Giannis and Middleton defensively, having his defense on the wing is so valuable. And he only played 27 minutes last night. He's still getting eased back in. But those were 27 very valuable minutes, especially with Kyle Lowry going down to injury. Hopefully he is not out for long. And Chris Boucher as well off the bench, contributing well last night. As well as Aaron Baines playing his 18 minutes and not really doing much. I think Aaron Baines' minutes continue to trickle down at this point. If this is the lineup they see fit going forward and they go with the small ball lineup, I still would suspect in games where they're going to play someone like Joel Embiid or Karl-Anthony Towns, one of the big elite centers in the league, I would suspect Aaron Baines still gets the start just for the size and the physicality on defense, even though Aaron Baines hasn't really been rebounding the ball or defending that great. Siakam isn't going to be able to deal with those type of guys very effectively, nor is Anunoby. And so that is something that you could see in those types of games. But with that being said, I think this lineup of Lowry, VanVleet, Powell, Anunoby, and Siakam, given the health of those five, is probably the most likely starting five moving forward for this Toronto Raptors team. The last comment on the Milwaukee Bucks, and it's to do with Giannis. This is no disrespect on Giannis, because Giannis is one of the best players in the league. He is a freak of nature, a freak athlete, and a freak talent. He is a very, very, very elite player. With that being said, we're now getting to a point now where we already know that Giannis, as he did it last year, he's done it again this year, Giannis isn't the guy who's covering the team's best offensive player as a wing. If it's a guard, obviously you wouldn't expect him to guard him. But he never really guards the team's best wing player. Man-to-man, mano-mano. Something like OG Anunoby does. Giannis doesn't do that. Giannis is someone who sits as the safety and tries to be the help guy, to get the blocks, to read things and get steals. And that's fine and dandy. But when you're playing a Kawhi Leonard, a Paul George, a LeBron James, someone of that caliber, Jimmy Butler, Giannis should want that matchup. But he doesn't. Or at least Coach Bud doesn't let him have it, and I suppose we'll never know whether that's the case, whether Coach Bud doesn't let him have it, or Giannis doesn't want it. But he's now been a Defensive Player of the Year, and a guy who will be a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year for years to come, who doesn't guard the primary ball handler and the elite offensive players, which is a bit odd. And now we're getting to the point where we're starting to see a little bit, it's not determined or anything by any stretch, but we are starting to see that with Jrue Holiday out of the lineup, Giannis is probably a much better offensive player when he's not the primary ball handler. And so Giannis is still a freak of nature and an amazing talent, but we're talking about an MVP candidate and someone who's won the MVP. And that guy who's won the MVP is better on defense, or at least plays on defense as the help man, not as the primary man-to-man guy against the elite wings, and is better offensively without the ball in his hands. And sure, you can make the exception of centers that are in the contention for MVP, like Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic in this upcoming season, but Joel Embiid is another beast down low, and Jokic is an elite playmaker and plays with the ball in his hands. He is. That is where Jokic is best, is with the ball in his hands. And Joel Embiid is just another level of freak down low with his strength and his footwork and his size. And his defense is elite as well. But I find it a little bit odd that we're talking about one of the best players in the league, and his best assets on the offensive and defensive end of the floor are not being the primary guy. As far as a ball handler, for a perimeter player, even though Giannis is quite lengthy, he's not a guard, he is still a perimeter player, and someone that creates a lot, and is someone who handles the ball a lot, and has that ability. And then the same thing defensively. I find it a bit odd that we're talking about a potential MVP candidate, someone who's won the MVP, and is someone that is better off not as the primary guy on both ends of the floor as of right now, in my opinion. I find that a little bit odd. But let me know what you guys think about that. Moving along. I want to take a little quick second to shout out Anthony Edwards. LaMelo Ball's been getting the love in Charlotte, how his progression has improved, getting into the starting lineup, having some really good performances. Anthony Edwards been quietly doing the same thing over here in Minnesota. He dropped 28 points last night on the Lakers, and it's been a continuous forward positive progression for him so far throughout the last few weeks. He also had 7 rebounds and 5 assists to go along with that last night. And he's been playing well. He put up 28 against the Lakers last night. And if you look at some games previous to that, he's had some very good numbers in previous games as well. And he just keeps trending upwards. He's on a very positive upward trend. 28. 28 last night, 18 against the Raptors, 21 against Charlotte, 11 against the Clippers, 22 against Dallas, 20 against OKC. He's very much been on a very positive upward trend. He averaged 13.3 points in the month of January, and he's now averaging 17.3 points a night in the month of February. That is while still only shooting 32% from 3, and I have no doubt that he will improve in that area. However, his field goal percentage has jumped up 7 points from January to February. Anthony Edwards is going up. There's no doubt this guy has a lot of talent on the basketball court and just thoroughly enjoys playing the game. There's no doubt about that. And so I have no doubt that Anthony Edwards is going to be a very good player in this league. He just hasn't got the talk about it yet, hasn't got the respect on it yet. I know he's not the first overall pick, so he's not going to get talked about as much as... Or no, he was the first overall pick. Disregard. I was going to say he's not the first overall pick, he's not going to get talked about as much. He was the first overall pick, and he's not getting talked about as much. Now, given this Minnesota team is one of the worst teams in the league, where Charlotte are in a bit of a playoff hunt, and this Minnesota team still hasn't really been able to see a consistent time of Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell healthy. Karl-Anthony Towns just got back from the virus, and now D'Angelo Russell is out with an injury for 6 to 8 weeks. I hope by the end of this season we can finally see those two guys play together healthy and see if this Minnesota team can at least be half decent. Because Malik Beasley's been very good for them so far this season. Anthony Edwards is on the up. We obviously all know how good Karl-Anthony Towns is. We can add D. Russ into this mix, have that along with Edwards, Towns, and Beasley. Be interesting to see how that works. But quick shout out to Anthony Edwards. Other shout out I wanted to give after last night was Josh Hart. Josh Hart had a very good game for the Pelicans off the bench last night in what was a big win over Memphis. Memphis could not defend last night. Josh Hart had a very good game last night and has been very good for them all season. He had 27 points last night, 6 of 11 from deep, 10 of 16 from the field, while getting 9 rebounds. Josh Hart is like, what, 6'5", 6'6", 6'5". He is not a tall guy, and he's not a big, stocky 6'5" either. He's not like PJ Tucker or Chuck Hayes of the past with Houston and Toronto as an undersized center. He's not an overly stocky guy. It's just hustle and effort and positioning and an awareness of the game and basketball IQ and the want to get the rebounds. And because of that, he essentially plays small forward or power forward for them normally, even though he's listed as a shooting guard. He often plays a couple of positions up due to that rebounding ability, his ability to be effective in that area, along with his ability to shoot the ball. He's been so valuable to this Pelicans team off the bench this year, and you could argue their most valuable bench player this season, with J.J. Redick struggling to find his form shooting still up to this point in time in the season. And shout out to him, man. I think he was a piece that people kind of forgot about in the Anthony Davis trade, but he's been a quality piece for this team off the bench, I must say. He'll be an important piece for them moving forward as they continue to be more and more competitive with the development of their youth. Don't want to touch on it too long, but quick shout out to Damian Lillard last night, who, as always, was absolutely insane in the clutch. Lou Dort defended him very well for most of the game, but then in the fourth quarter, Damian Lillard does what Damian Lillard does. It was Dame time, and he did his thing. Shout out to Lou Dort as well, though. Lou Dort had 23 points of his own last night, starting to consistently prove a little bit more that he is more than just a defensive player. Lastly, anyone who stayed up late to watch this game, you guys got a nuts game and a nuts comeback from the Brooklyn Nets against the Phoenix Suns. I looked at this. I initially was not watching this game, and we were rolling into about 6 minutes left in the second quarter. I just checked my fantasy lineup. DeAndre Ayton's in there. Saw they were winning by 20. I was like, okay, Brooklyn are missing Kyrie and Durant tonight. Phoenix are taking them to town, continuing their hot streak. They're chilling. But I was like, you know, I'm going to watch the second half anyways. I was just doing my thing, wanted to watch a little bit of basketball. You know how it is. And then Brooklyn come out of nowhere and win the third quarter 34-25 and the fourth 40-24. They dropped 40 on Phoenix in the fourth quarter. That was with Chris Paul balling in that fourth quarter, who I believe dropped 15 or 16 points in that fourth quarter. But Devin Booker didn't do much. And they did not get DeAndre Ayton anywhere near as involved as they should have. DeAndre Ayton was often matched up against either DeAndre Jordan, who hasn't been great, Jeff Green, who should not be guarding DeAndre Jordan, or switched on to guards who should not be guarding him, and DeAndre Ayton should be able to do something within the post. In saying that, Brooklyn did send a lot of immediate double teams at DeAndre Ayton last night because they knew that was going to be an issue otherwise, given the fact that DeAndre Ayton shot 7 of 9. They kind of figured out that they were going to have to send some doubles or Ayton was going to punish them. But Ayton did well to playmaker out of the post as well, and dish out once he got double teamed. So I think they needed to get him the ball a little bit more, so they could create some opportunities from that double coming, and then be able to create some opportunities from there. But that being said, James Harden had a masterclass last night, 11 points, 7 rebounds, 38 points. He absolutely led this team. Big helps from Jeff Green, who contributed late in that game, Landry Shamet, who had some key plays, Tyler Johnson and Joe Harris, who made some big shots on the run with James Harden off the court at the start of the fourth quarter. Tyler Johnson was 5 of 8 from deep last night. Joe Harris was doing some nice things not on the three-point line, had a nice little post move that had Kyrie all excited with the footwork. It's very, very nice play from Joe Harris, Tyler Johnson last night. And it's a big win. It's a big comeback for them and ends Phoenix's win streak. Something Phoenix are going to have to figure out mentally and make sure they can close some leads a little bit more and not just lay the foot off the gas pedal, to say the least. Well, that being said, it was a great night of basketball, man. It really was. That was my thoughts on the games last night. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. I thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.